Hey, what's going on, everybody? Andrew Dawson here with Operation for Freedom. I want to share with you something insane today. I just had sat through a conversation with a SANE nurse, a sexual assault nurse, and heard her stories, heard what she's going through, and there is some alarming information that she shared that I want to share with you today. I also want to talk about the mission and objective of Operation for Freedom a little bit, but this is some dark stuff. It's heartbreaking stuff that all of us need to hear. We don't want to hear about it, but we need to hear about it. So that's what today's video is about. Okay, so let's just jump into this. I sat through this conversation with a sexual assault nurse. She was on an interview, and I was blown away. I was blown away by the information that she was sharing. We've been in this work. My wife and I, our team, we've been in this work a long time, and you hear a lot of crazy stuff, but I was blown away by what she was sharing about her work in the medical field. And it's alarming, it's heartbreaking, but it's stuff we need to hear to begin to make the right moves, to begin to move forward in this work in the human trafficking field, to begin to do good work in our churches, and to protect our kids from being abused, exploited, and even trafficked. And so she began to talk about this issue, and don't tune me out when I say this, but pornography and how it's grooming our children to normalize these highly abusive sexual scenarios. And you may not think your child may not be exposed to pornography, but I know there's probably someone in your community who's been exposed to this. And this is what people don't want to connect to, this issue of human trafficking. And one of the best examples I can think of when it comes to this is years ago, I remember seeing articles and interviews about how violent video games are influencing kids to be more violent. Well, there's some really good research out there about how pornography is influencing children, and there's this influence to reenact what they're seeing through this highly explicit material. But whether you believe it or not, pornography is influencing and it's affecting our culture more than we think. It's becoming a real problem, and it's especially becoming a problem with our kids, which is heartbreaking just to think about. But as this nurse was talking through some of her cases and some of the stuff that she was dealing with, she said something that was really crazy. She said a third or a half of those committing sexual crimes against children is by minors. A third or a half of those committing sexual crimes against children is done by minors. This was mind-blowing to me. I've never heard it put like this. I've never seen this. I'm learning. We're always learning. We're always moving forward in our education and trying to do what's right in this field and be survivor-led. But just hearing this, it blew my mind that many cases. And she went on to say that this isn't, you have to realize that this isn't just happening in a vacuum in one hospital or one clinic or one community, but if it's happening on a regular basis in one community, it's probably happening in other communities around America. And so this is some important information that we've got to look at as church leaders, as children's pastors, as task force leaders or community leaders. When we begin to wrap our head around the issue in our personal communities where we live, we've got to begin to look at our kids and pornography, familial trafficking, family issues, abuse issues, and begin to look at this and say, how do we curb this? How do we do something about this in our communities? And so I was blown away that this is 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, children who are enacting these violent situations and scenarios onto their peers, onto these other kids who they're in community with. And it's important to know that these aren't cases that are typical. I think there's the flip side of the coin, where this is typical, normal developmental things that are happening with the child in their body, and they're just exploring, and this is part of that development phase of life. But these are actually documented medical cases that constituted sexual violation and violent sexual assaults by another minor. And here's the other shoe that's going to drop, is that in most of those cases, pornography was the leading cause in these issues. So the person or the individual, the child doing the abuse, was viewing or regularly viewing pornographic, explicit, violent pornography, and that was a leading cause and influence once they dug into this. This is a huge issue. This is a huge issue in our community. This is something we have to look at, we have to know and be aware of, so we can help our kids. One of the cases that she began to share about was a heartbreaking case. 13-year-old girl, female, in her room, and she had a 16-year-old brother who was, after the fact, they find out he was addicted to pornography, viewing it with his friends, all these things. He comes into her room one night, and he said these words. It's in the report. He said, this is through her testimony. He said, "I can't stop thinking about what I've been watching." And then he proceeded to rape her. Just heartbreaking. I mean, gosh, if you have kids or grandkids, the destruction that pornography that's being exposed to kids at such a young age, at any age, but at kids at this age, is not a victimless crime. It's not a something that, hey, I view this passively, or they view this passively, or they've seen this. It's coming of age, finding the magazines and under the bed, whatever. It's so much bigger of a deal than what we take action on. We may know it. Most don't know it. Most don't want to know about it, but it's so much bigger than we think. And this is happening in our communities. And so here's how we do something about it. Here's how we make an impact in this. And this is my best advice on this, is we've got to gain a wider perspective of sexual exploitation and trafficking. What does trafficking look like? What are the root causes in your community? Where is it happening in your community? And specifically, how does it look? With The Sound of Freedom that just came out, an incredible movie, an opportunity for awareness in this issue, it leaves out a big piece of the fact that this isn't just one, it isn't just happening like in the movie, but it's happening like this in our communities, where sexual assault nurses are dealing with kids who are, and perpetrators and assault victims who have been damaged by individuals who are addicted to pornography, who feel this stepping stone process of, after viewing it, after becoming addicted to, then and wanting to enact it onto someone, which creates a huge vulnerability in our kids. Once an individual has experienced trauma and they've gone through this process of experiencing such exploitation, what a huge vulnerability in our kids to have self-worth and confidence, and so much mental, just the mental damage that's happened there, to put them in such a vulnerable place that traffickers can prey on them is incredibly heartbreaking. So we have a chance to gain some perspective in our communities, to look at what's happening, widen our perspective of sexual exploitation and human trafficking, and not buttonhole it. And, without coming to your community, without knowing where you live, whether it's rural or whether you're in a metropolitan area, I guarantee you I could find grooming, sexual exploitation, something happening in your community. It's happening there. It's not in a vacuum in one area in a third world country or in Amsterdam or Thailand or in places that where this nurse is working. But if it's happening there, it's happening everywhere. And this is documented. This is proof. We've got casework all over the nation where this is happening. As a pastor, a children's leader, or someone in a daycare, or if you're working with students as a teacher, man, it's important to begin to realize like this is something that could be happening with some of your kids. You've got to know what it looks like. You've got to be able to recognize it and report and respond in a powerful way. And so here's my advice too. Get involved, but before getting involved, get educated. Like learn a little bit about this issue. Begin to dig in a little bit and find out how it's happening, where it's happening. And then when you get involved, you'll be able to make a case. You'll be able to see what's going on. You'll be able to identify red flags. You'll be able to see a student in need or a family in need and make a significant difference. So our work in Operation for Freedom, our whole mission is to find the vulnerable, is to do just that, find the vulnerable and offer hope. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We would love to have you check out operationforfreedom.org online to see a little bit more about what we do. But that vulnerability piece, that's huge. That's huge in it. And this is the vulnerable, what this nurse was dealing with. This is the vulnerable we're dealing with in our communities. We don't want to hear about it. We just don't want to hear about it. It's not happy. It's not a big grand vision of reaching some goal or building some organization or reaching the kingdom. We think it's not that, but it is. These are the hurting. These are the exploited in our communities, and we've got to do something about it. So, hey, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for checking this out and being a part of this video and hanging out with me for a few minutes. If you feel like it's valuable content and you want to be a part of this more and you want more of this content, you can like, subscribe, hit the bell. Every week we're going to have videos coming out like this to help educate, to help inform, and to help people take action in the fight against human trafficking. Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.